When you're around people that have validated you, that like you, that approve of you, or someone that is below you in status, maybe the girl that's not that pretty, maybe the guy that's not that fucking cool, or maybe you're just better in that room, you're the man, right? You feel cool, you feel comfortable, you feel confident. Every joke is just hitting. You're not self-conscious. You're able to be groovy and cool. You're able to associate freely, and people like you, people gravitate towards you, and you're the cool guy. However, whenever you get into a room where you're dealing with someone that has not validated you and is not doing that right now, maybe you just said hi and someone's not validating you, you don't feel safe subconsciously because of that in that room. Your brain is not switched on, it's switched off. You can't think of what to say. You just, whatever you do, whatever you try, it comes across awkward. Whatever is you're normally able to do, it's not coming out now. You're not smooth. The things that normally sound good are not sounding good right now, and nothing is working. And you feel like you're walking around trying to take that people need to give you something in order for you to feel good again. That people have an emotional control switch of your mental state of being. Now, what this symptom and phenomena is really one fucking thing. And that one fucking thing is that you're someone who needs validation externally. Your validation is external based rather than internal. This is the same reason that sometimes you can have a night or you can have a day of meetings, sales meetings, whatever the context is socially that we're talking about, where you're doing phenomenal. And then another day, you are a completely different person. You're not having a consistent streak of winning. You're not having a consistency in who you are being as a person. Tuesday, you might be a confident motherfucker if a lot of people approve of you, or if you're in a room where people are more likely to do so. And Thursday, maybe you're in a very high status event, a high status room, right? A backdoor poker room in LA. Maybe we're talking a networking event, maybe we're talking a party, whatever. All of a sudden, where's the fucking jokes? Where's the charisma? Where's the confidence and the presence? Nowhere to be found. The reason is because you're around higher status individuals in the first day and they're not approving of you, they're not validating you. And because your validation is completely or largely external, it's never completely, it's largely externally based, you're a completely different person. And what you gotta understand is that, especially when you're dealing with a woman, like in this beautiful fucking picture that I created, my team did, as soon as she has slightest feeling that you are getting your validation from her, that she's making you feel like the man or not the man, all attraction is killed. Because you gotta understand the concept of validation. Validation is one of the biggest emotions that precedes attraction. If you want to create attraction with a woman, and to be honest, attraction in the root of the word can be used from guy to guy in terms of like, oh, friendships, oh, want to do business with that guy, chasing, approval and those kinds of things. Can be in a sales meeting, can be in anything. The concept of validation exists in human to human in general. And it essentially is the thing that creates whether someone is going to want to put in effort for you and is going to want to chase you and is going to want to engage with you, or whether someone sees that as a waste of time, waste of opportunity. This is the same reason, you may or may not have noticed this in your life, that when you are already on good terms with someone, when it's your family or your very best friend, many people in those cases are, funnily enough, willing to do less inconvenient shit. Obviously the extreme stuff they'll be willing to do, but less day-to-day inconvenient shit for those kinds of people than people that they just met or that they are just becoming friends with, or that they're just dating, whatever, right? Because here, there's still validation to be gotten. Here, that validation loop is already completely finished. There's no more validation to be gotten. So then the subconscious mind rationalizes subconsciously, outside of our awareness, oh, here I'm only willing to put in a 3 out of 10 in effort because there's no more validation I'm gonna get back for it. And here I'm willing to put in an 8 out of 10 because I can still get validation, which, then increases my likelihood of survival, because we have a subconscious mind that's only programmed for surviving and reproducing. And so it's always looking to conserve time and energy unless it's going to do those things, unless it's going to increase our chances of survival or reproduction. And so therefore, if this is already done, there's no uncertainty to be solved, there's no validation to be gotten, then we're going to only be willing to do it on this side. It's a very interesting concept that you may have seen with your own family, where you might think, well, I'm your fucking family, you should be willing to do more for me than this fucking, new friend of yours. But that's not how the human mind works, because there's not something to be gotten there. Okay? Now, obviously, people who are truly rooted in their own conscious belief systems of like, hey, this is what's right, like I like to say I am, they'll actually do more for the person that they're already engaged with because that person has shown them loyalty, that person deserves it a lot more. Now, some people are like that, but they're very far and few between. Now, with that being said, what you're going to find is that if you're walking up with a half cup to life in general, right? To a girl, to a business opportunity, to a sales meeting, whatever, you're never going to be in control of that scenario. You're always going to be at the whim of someone else. And what you'll find, the symptom of this is that you're walking up in a certain state down here, and then as soon as a girl, for example, smiles at you or touches you or approves of you in some kind of subcommunicative way, your confidence shoots up to here or here, right? That's how you know. Now, obviously, guys, to some extent, every human will have a small boost if they get some sort of validation, right? Every human will get some sort of a little bump, right? But what we need is a little 5% bump rather than a 50% fundamentally. I'm basing my whole sense of self-esteem on this bump. And so the difference is I'm basing my fucking confidence on this, my validation on this, versus, okay, it's a nice little boost. Just like if you want to step outside and wear some nice clothes and you feel a little extra kick in your step, that's okay. But if you're like, oh, I can't step outside because I don't have the right clothes, that's fucking retarded and you're a fucking pussy, right? Now, what you'll find is that neediness, low value, trying too hard, self-conscious, that's all symptoms of you having, once again, not an internally validated self. And this is what you gotta understand, guys. Attraction is largely validation, right? As soon as you show a person that they're the one who is validating you by your subcommunication, it kills all attraction and the magnetic polarity that is needed to create it. Because once again, for any relationship to exist, there needs to be some form of validation there of like, if someone's going to engage with you and do good things and get in your good graces, that they feel validated, they feel better about themselves. And that is basically going to happen whenever you are of higher status than the other person, right? To some extent. Because then if they get into a good groove with you, they internally feel higher status now as well. And that's literally what attraction is, guys. Attraction is a discrepancy between perceived social status. A discrepancy from the other person. In their mind, there's a discrepancy in your favor, right? Between their social status, which is here, and your social status, which is here. When that happens, if they perceive this, for whatever fucking reason, doesn't matter, they perceive this, they're going to be able to be validated by you, and they're going to be able to bring up their own sense of self-esteem. That's the same reason that people are willing to spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on watches, on jewelry, and look, I do it myself, as you may or may not have noticed, and clothes and whatnot, right? But my point once again is like, you can do that, no issue, but you can't need it for your sense of self-esteem. You can do that and have a little nice couple percent boost, like a little extra kick in your step. Nice, you put on, you look good, okay, you feel nice. But you can't base your fundamental sense of self-esteem, sense of self on it. Because if you do, your sense of self-esteem will be on the external, it will be like a glass house. And I know many entrepreneurs, many guys that do this, that are very successful, but they base their confidence on these external things. And when they're not with those external things and people don't know that about them, then they're nowhere to be seen in terms of confidence, right? And that's also going to lead a lot of times to drugs. It's going to lead a lot of times to using your money for attraction directly, which obviously you never want to do. it's going to lead to a lot of bad things. And also it's going to lead to a lot of anxiety, because if you're basing all of that value on external things, whether that's external approval from other people or material things, whatever, then you're always going to have subconsciously this anxiety of like, this can always be taken away from you. And so that's a very difficult thing to do. It's not a workable thing for the result that we want. Now, I don't care whether that sounds cool or not, that we need to be internally validated and that it needs to be based on our presence and energy rather than, I don't give a shit if it sounds cool. I give a fuck if it's workable to get fucking bitches, okay? That's what I'm about. Obviously I'm fucking around, but the idea is that I just say what is actually gonna work for your results. I don't care if it sounds cool or gay or spiritual or whatever or not. I just have no attachment to that. So with that being said, you need to shift from that externally validated sense of self, right, to an internally validated sense of self, where you're going to come across with confidence, independence, high value, and natural energy, and the result is that she feels your energy and the attraction is natural, and the attraction happens naturally. And so the idea there is that you don't need, in this case, to really do anything, because naturally, because you're walking around with this internally validated self, you project that outward, okay, because you feel good, you're internally validated, so you have a certain magnetic energy about you. What is that magnetic energy? It's essentially a high status tell, right? The magnetic energy is you sub-communicating to people through your energy, which you can also explain as to being your micro expressions, how deep you breathe, how you walk, but very subtle, right? Obviously we can all say like, oh, walk like this, and then, you know, walk like this, whatever. Or even if you're just gonna be like, instead of this, walk like this, okay, stand like this. Okay, you can say that to someone, but it can still not be the right energy. It's the je ne sais quoi, as the French say, right? It's that special energy that makes things click. And that can only come from your subconscious mind. You can't consciously project that out, because it's largely about how you feel in the moment, okay? Rather than how you speak or how you stand or how you do it, it's about how you feel when you're doing it. And on a deeper level, it's about where you are coming from in that moment. So what I mean by that is that we all, in every moment, are coming from a certain place. So when we, speak, right? We're saying things or we're walking. We're doing that, all of that, from a certain mental stance. Mental stance. Okay? Now that mental stance can be negative, can be positive, but it can be neutral. It can be negative or positive for the result that we want. Okay? Now obviously it's not a binary black and white. It can be like positive, but is it a 1 out of 10 or is it a 10 out of 10? Right? Now with that being said, the mental stance, that's what can create that je ne sais quoi. It's essentially, what is your mental stance? It's the position you're coming from. The reason I call this a mental stance, the term that I coined, is because we also have a physical stance, right? And any good boxing coach will tell you that the physical stance matters more than actually doing the punch correctly, right? It's like where you punch from the feet needs to be correct first, otherwise you're never going to get some power out of it, right? So that is what matters more. Now, with that, once you have the right stance, you can punch, right, a lot more correctly. And so from there, the same idea applies to the mental side of things. I can tell you okay, yeah, if you want to jab, okay, do your hands straight, or if you want to hook, 90-degree angle, whatever, right? These kinds of things. But if it doesn't start in the stance of the feet and the stance, right, then it's not going to work. So the same idea is here. I can tell you, speak loud, do this. This is how you want to communicate. But, and that's all these superficial bullshit fucking things that you see on YouTube nowadays, right? These people that give these tips of oh yeah, look someone in the eye, remember their name, oh shake someone's hand like this, or walk like this, or talk like this. Motherfucker, are you fucking stupid? Don't you think everybody already knows that? They're not able to fucking apply it, okay? And when they even do apply it, it's not fucking working. Why? Because we're not coming from the right mental stance. Now, to make that more clear, your mental stance is essentially like your momentary identity, the momentary mental place you're coming from. For example, this motherfucker is coming from a mental stance of taking value. right? Taking value or taking validation. This motherfucker is coming from a mental stance of offering value. Now, how did they get there though, right? What is the difference beyond just saying that? The difference is their identity, okay? Their subconscious mind. Now, we all have a certain subconscious program, okay? We have the conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind. Now, your mental stance is the momentary place you're coming from. Now, what dictates that largely is the macro, right? General place that you're coming from in life. Now, that is your identity, right? So, in order for us to change your identity, we need to know what it is now, okay? So, your identity is largely based on the beliefs you hold about yourself, okay? And so, the problem is that if you're walking around with an identity or a belief about yourself that you are not the prize, right? That you do not deserve that level of woman, then as soon as you go to approach, it's essentially like saying hello with a fucking sign on your forehead saying, hey, I am not worthy of you. Please approve of me. And you can probably think about the fact that that's never gonna fucking work, okay? That's also the reason that when you do approach a woman, right, or deal with a woman that you feel subconsciously is outside of your league, you can never fucking get her, no matter what you do. And even if by some chance of sheer luck you get her, okay, because of some situation that occurred, you will never be able to keep her. Or you're not going to be, it's not going to be a relationship on your terms. And you can do whatever you want, but you'll never be able to make it work because your subconscious won't allow you to, okay? And so we got to control that subconscious, because that subconscious is going to dictate what we feel like we deserve. So, what we basically, in real life, what we, are able to get. So because in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you think you deserve subconsciously. And so how do we change that? How do we change that program of like, I'm up to a 6, right? I'm comfortable. It's pretty fucking shitty, by the way. But with that being said, how do we change that program? Well, what we essentially want to do is we want to start with a very simple exercise that I like to call mental stance shifting, right? Now that is basically from moment to moment, you want to start living from the identity that would be suitable for the one that you want, for the results that you want. And how you do that is by over and over again, before you get into the situation, shifting your mental stance. Okay? And that is very simply done by choice and choice alone. And the more you choose this mental stance, right, the more that becomes your habit, right? And then if you stop choosing this, then this one becomes your habit. It becomes a new neurological pattern. This sincerely is how you start to really change yourself. This is the simplest way to do it. It's not the only way to do it, it's one part of it, okay? But over and over again, when you're in a situation, before you go into it, you choose to shift from this to this. You say, I am this, right? And you go and enter the situation from this place. So you enter instead of, I'll give you a different example, right? I'm a boxer. And whenever I started boxing, I remember that I was like 14 years old and I was very avoidant, right? I was pain avoidant. So when I was sparring, I was trying to just go light. I was trying to avoid the other guy going hard on me, X, Y, Z, right? And then I thought that was a good strategy to avoid pain. I thought that was a good strategy to stay safe, right? That was my mind's strategy to stay safe. Pretty logical, right? However, that actually didn't make me stay safe because I went to a tough fucking gym and, I grew up around Amsterdam and, they just don't play like that over there. If you know anything about fighting, I used to be a kickboxer. That's basically not how they roll. So if you do that, they're gonna fuck you up. Very quickly I realized that and I was like, I gotta change my strategy. So I basically shifted my mental stance because I saw it wasn't working, okay? Because I was like, okay, these people don't respect me, they're just fucking me up. So I shifted my mental stance and I was like, okay, well fuck this. Well, I'm gonna be now the one who's gonna be the instigator. I'm the motherfucking one who's gonna make them think about, oh, how should I be because I don't want to get too hurt. I'm gonna be the motherfucker that's thinking, I'm just here to fuck people up, okay? And I didn't even think about them hurting me or whatever. That's what they should be thinking about, right? And so you might even, in general situations of life, you might even think about this, where it's like, you walking into some room, right, and you being around a bunch of guys, or in a random country where you might not be the most safe, and you're thinking like, okay, all these guys are here. How do I make sure that I don't step on anybody's toes? Let me just make sure, whatever, right? So, something like this in any context, and you could notice that. And you could see, well, why the fuck do I actually operate like that? Why the fuck do I actually think like that? Because there's no actual real reason tangibly that I should be the one who should be like watching his back, So why the fuck don't you change it? And that's also what happened with me when I was like 14, around that same kind of time. I started hanging out with a lot of, criminal dudes and this and that. And I started like just operating like that. And I just saw that it started fucking working. And at the time I wasn't, look, I was always a tough kid. I've said before, I was very shy and insecure, but I was always willing to fight and stuff like that. But nevertheless, right, I saw that like with me adopting this new mental stance, people were actually really intimidated, and people were actually like feeding into my frame. And I was like, holy shit, this really works. And I was like baffled by it. And I'm being completely sincere, right? It was actually really surprising to me. And, even at that time with, girls and stuff like that, like I just started like acting like the motherfucker. And I was like, holy crap, like, you actually can just like pretend like you're literally the big fucking G, and people will just buy into it. It's actually fucking crazy. You act like a rock star, you get treated like a rock star. Now, the only caveat there is that you don't want to get into this loop of like, you're just delusionally acting like a rock star, but you're really not a rock star in real life. You're really not doing anything to become a rock star. You're fucking version of that, right? And so, then obviously people are at some point are just going to be like, well, dude, you're literally just someone who works at fucking McDonald's. This is not really it for me. You got to always also be building your real value, right? But what I always say, guys, is that what we do is most people in life, almost everybody, is in consumer culture matrix shit where they feel like they need to make all this money and buy all these things and do all this stuff to get confidence, right? To get to walk into a room like I'm the man, right? Now, in reality, it's that confidence is just an emotional thing that you can actually self-generate right fucking now. And any of these things are superficial standards that you've been told you need to meet in order to unleash a fuck ton of fucking confidence, which is not the case. And if you use this strategy, you will get confidence, but it will be ego-based confidence, and it will be based on these exact things. Which means that it's a glass house that anybody can break if they just break your frame of reality. I've told this story before, but if you are going into Nando's as a restaurant or whatever, right? Some bullshit restaurant, and the waiter just starts fucking with you and starts deframing you that like, oh, stop having a fucking stick up your ass, man. Like, enjoy life, man. And he just kind of fucks with you a bit, and he's just delusionally confident. Well, you're going to hate your life because the girl you're with is going to just choose his side because he has more certainty, and he actually will have more high status in that exact environment, because it's not about how high your status is on an absolute level. It's about how high your status is on a relative level within that relational context or group, right? Whether that's a group of 2 or 3 or 10, doesn't matter. It's about the relational context. Like I remember I had a buddy who was someone that certainly wasn't like popular or like, pulling some ass back in the day, but he's a cool guy, but nothing like that. And then he was a chef, right? And at some point, he worked at this restaurant, and then, these girls went to work at this restaurant that I knew. They were like some of the popular girls in the school, etc. And, beautiful girls. And then they went to work at the restaurant. And I spoke to this guy, one of my best friends. And at some point, he told me, that he ended up like smashing all of these girls, and that he would have never gotten, but only because he was the boss in the kitchen there. So within that fucking kitchen, he was extremely high status relative to them, and that kind of created an attraction because he was just the highest status in the fucking kitchen. As simple as that, right? So it's relative. Now, obviously, like I just said, you also want to improve, you have your absolute value, and then you have your relative value, right? This is what matters for attraction, but you want to always also be increasing your absolute value but just for you as a person, largely, right? You want to increase your absolute value because you want to make more money, because you want to be famous, because you want to have an impact on the world, because you want to be fucking fit, because you want to be able to fuck people up in a street fight, whatever it may be. Okay? But that's how it works. So essentially, back to the subconscious mind, you have that conscious mind and subconscious, and you can want all of these things, but your subconscious wants to keep you safe, and if it feels like you're down here and the person you're talking to is up here, it's going to do all of these things, which is anxiety, which is fidgeting, all of that bullshit, and this one is going to be the confidence and being attractive, being funny, all of that, right? The problem is that your conscious mind is pointing there, your subconscious pointing there. Now, what we do in this work of like hypnosis, NLP, perspective shifting, and specific social and mental experiments is we actually make it so that they're both pointing in this direction, right? So that we adjust the thermometer so that the temperature, the thermometer, when it fucking gets too hot, it shuts off or it turns the coolers on. When it gets too cold, it turns the heaters on, right? The coolers are obviously that anxiety thing. So look, the same idea with your own mind. You have a certain thermometer set at a certain level of success, and if you get above that, the heaters or the coolers, whatever the fuck kicks in and brings you down. AKA be awkward, shy, whatever, right? And then here, if you get too low, like, okay, now we're really comfortable, now we can crush it again, right? And so that's the case with your money, that's the case with how your body is, that's the case with what girls you date, that's the case with fucking how clean your room is, okay? Like, how clean your room is a standard. Because at some point, that motherfucker's so dirty that you're bound to fucking clean it. But then it's clean, it's okay, I'll leave one thing, I'll leave another thing, and then it becomes really fucking dirty again. Right? It goes like this, just like anything in life. So the idea is to raise our standards, and how we do that is by making a conscious choice, and then from there, reconditioning it over and over and over again, and then from there we have a new standard, right? And if you think, oh, I can't do that, well, let me ask you a question, you lying motherfucker. If I gave you $50 million, if you could raise your standard in whatever area you please right now, could you do it? Huh? If you could show me that you raised your standard, if you could fucking walk up confident, internally validated to this woman right now, and I gave you $50 million, if you did it, I promise you, you'd be able to do it. Because your brain would go and it would click. And it would basically see that the upside is so high that it outweighs the downside, and it would just give you confidence. Okay? And so, there's, you gotta be fucking shitting me. There's a way to actually design your brain and re-engineer your brain so that it will actually, at that point, it will send out confidence instead of fear. Okay? And there's a way to do that. And that's my work with people that I do. And if you want to know more about that, then click the link in the description in order to work with me on a one-on-one basis or a group program where I'm going to be able to redesign your subconscious mind to actually, allow you to get those results that you want, whether that's in your dating, in your confidence, in your networking, in your business, whatever. It's all together, right? Because mindset is all encompassing. But nevertheless, the focus is on that social confidence and the success there. So with that being said, you got to understand that, and then if we work with the rules of the mind, which is, right, wanting to protect you, wanting to keep you safe, etc., then we can make sure that we design it with beliefs, certain beliefs, so that if your mind believes that it's more safe in XYZ situation to send confidence than fear, then it will send a fuckload of confidence. Just like the example, if I put a fucking gun to your head, and I said, I will blow your fucking brains out if you don't walk up confident right now, you're going to be confident. And I'll give you one last example to drill this home. This is actually where I really started realizing this. I was very, very fucking shy and insecure growing up, right? I'll pop a picture if I remember to do so. And I remember in school, if I had to say anything or ask a question, I was very shy to do so. But if I was pulled up to the front of the class and now I was really put on the spot, I really had to deliver something in that moment. I remember sometimes, if it was in just a certain way, my brain just realized, oh, if you're just going to be soft talking and insecure, you're going to be worse off than if you just fucking go for it now. And then all of a sudden, boom, I was just able to fucking present, Because my brain realized, oh, now at this point, you're just better off just being really confident. Because it's the same idea with the kickboxing thing. When my brain realized like, oh shit, I'm actually more unsafe when I'm fucking, retrieving and pain avoidant than if I just fucking go in there, right? And then all of a sudden it fucking clicked. So those are massive, massive points and pieces for you to understand. And look, if you want to go deeper on this, the idea that I want to leave you off with is that in terms of dating, attraction, social dynamics, your confidence, the biggest part is always going to be the being. And that's what we talked about today. The validation, right? Because you can do this thing, like these tricks that people talk about, right? Which honestly aren't wrong, but they're wrong if you're trying to compensate using that. Which is like, oh yeah, bro, you gotta say this, and then you gotta walk away, or you gotta have no contact, or this. It's all tricks to like devalidate, or you gotta push and pull and all this kind of stuff, right? Okay, not a problem, but if you're doing that because you're not naturally creating a validation gap because of who you are being already, right? Because you're naturally this guy and you're gonna solve it with band-aid solutions like techniques, tricks, and external things, then it's never gonna fucking work. And it's just like, and that's also why, you guys, this is not my main channel, okay? This is not my main business. It's honestly been doing extremely well. I launched this stuff like a couple of weeks ago and I probably made just under 30 grand with this, just posting a couple of videos here and there. But with that, and I'm loving doing this because I feel like it's very valuable for you guys, as you guys have been telling me a ton in the DMs, which is, by the way, Boyd Confidence. You're going to shoot me a DM with your feedback. But with that being said, the reason I started this, this is why I brought this up. The reason I started this is because, guys, name me like actually sincerely one person that teaches this kind of stuff that can actually show you that they had or have the results. Because I sincerely can't think of a single one. And I know, to be honest, I don't probably know so many because I think these are all fucking nerds that teach this kind of stuff. Not because they teach this kind of stuff, but just because they're fucking nerds, right? Because they're out here being like some kind of coach and they're dating a fucking six that doesn't even really like them, right? It's just embarrassing. It's like a fat ass trying to teach a fitness program. It doesn't make any sense, It's honestly kind of illegal. So with that being said, like imagine that someone tried to teach you how to invest and how to make money. And the guy, like I made my first million at 21, okay? And imagine that like someone tried to teach you how to make money and they were in debt, or they had like 10 grand in their bank account. How ridiculous would that be, right? Nevertheless. And if you think that you know someone, you probably need to just raise your standards, okay? So with that being said, the being is always the first part, right? And that's the reason I was actually gonna make this point. That's why I said that whole thing. The reason that these guys don't have the results even though they're teaching it is because they're only focused on the doing and or the having, right? But they still don't have the being and the subconscious aligned. They're not really it. That's why they're just not naturally actually like fucking cool, right? And that's where it's fucking lacking. And that's why they're having this situation, right? And then on the odd night, lucky here and there, okay, but it's not actually gonna fly long term. So that's the most important part. Now the doing is obviously communication skills. Those are still important, like how to vibe, like all of these kinds of things, how to work a group, whatever. It's still good to have good technical skills. But even like one of my other companies, right, is an insurance sales agency. And one of my top producers, he said this, and I was like, I completely agree. Obviously he learned from me, so, that's gonna speak for itself. But the guy said this to the group, right? He said, look, any top producer, they're gonna be technically sound, right? They're gonna be good, they're gonna have skill, they're gonna have a good script, they're gonna know objections, know rebuttals, etc. But the bigger thing is that they're expecting the other person, the person on the other line, to just close. They're just expecting it, They're just having an expectation subconsciously of like they'll buy, right? It's this expectation of success, an expectation of positive outcome, an expectation of they're gonna like me, an assumption of they're gonna like me, etc. But the bigger thing is an expectation, yes. An assumption, yes. But needing it, no. Never needing it, right? You want it, you like it, you expect it, you assume it, but you never fucking need it. And that's a big ass difference. And that's obviously also something that's gonna come from having that internal validation. Because if you are internally validated, you think like you're the shit, you think you're the prize, and you probably are, And from there, you're going to expect someone to like you. And therefore, you're going to communicate and sub-communicate in a way like you expect them to like you. And then they're going to, kind of see that coming to them. Their subconscious is going to see that certainty and that expectation. And they're just going to go with it. Just like in sales, in this life insurance sales thing, it's like, if you just speak in a way like people are supposed to buy life insurance, they're supposed to buy it now, and they should have done it yesterday, and you're just very bland, like, yeah, okay, we'll go ahead and see if it gets you approved. Okay, gotcha. So what's going to be your zip code? You're just very assumptive, right? Now, that's then going to sub-communicate that they should just do this. People just follow certainty and assumption and strength. And so that's what you want to do. And like, I'll tell you something. This guy, one time I was out, right, in Amsterdam, and I remember this dude had asked me, like, how do you do this? The things that I was doing, you can imagine, right? And it was just on such a level that he'd just never seen before. And it was just like so out of his reality. And he was just like, how did you do it? And I said, let me think about it, get back to you, right? And I was actually very young at this time. I was like 18, 19. And, I got back to him. I was like, you know what? I understand what it is. And the guy that asked me actually was like a dating coach. And I told him, you know what it is? It is just normal for me. It is just within my reality. It's just what I expect. It's not special for me. Obviously, it's hella fun. I love it, blah, blah, blah. But it's just in my reality. And how did I get it in my reality? By switching my mental stance continuously, by reprogramming my subconscious with the exact practices that I teach you guys in my private programs, and then, or like that I do on you guys, rather, right? I'm teaching it here. I'm doing it on you in the private thing. And then continuous action, right? So with that being said, it's not that complicated. But you do need to look beneath the surface. And guys, from there, if you have that, you're going to sub-communicate that. They're going to have that expectation because you have that expectation. I'll tell you one more story to really end this and sign this one off. And that is that there's a podcast clip of a guy called Darren Brown, which is a fantastic hypnotist and kind of like a performance guy in that, right? And then Joe Rogan interviewed him. You can probably find this by looking it up. And he said, like, what is this hypnotism thing? How does it work? And does it really work? And is it really real? Right? And what makes it work? Then when you say sleep, someone just actually feels like they're going to kind of sleep. Right? And you can experience it with me. And hypnosis is not a one-trick pony, like wonder, like, some people say this. You say sleep, now you're confident, boom. And then it's just done. That is not real, okay? That's not how it works. But it can plant a very strong seed, and then if we combine that with certain other things, then it's the strongest, right? I personally like to combine it with NLP, with perspective shifts, and then with real-world social experiments to bring it home, to create a real reference, strong, fortified belief system that is actually real and works, right? At an identity level. Now, with that being said, the hypnosis thing, this is a different point about it. What he said was this. Yeah, he told a story where he was in university. He would always hypnotize people to quit smoking, all this kind of stuff, right? And then there was this kid that walked into his room and he thought that it was a different guy who he had already hypnotized. So when he does hypnosis, he'll give the suggestion in future sessions when I say, sleep, you're going to go right to sleep. You're going to knock the fuck out. And obviously then it just works the next time better. So he thought this guy had already had that. And then he just said, yeah, go have a seat. And then he was kind of distracted. He said, okay, sleep. And the guy just fucking knocked out. And he was like, afterwards, he realized, it was a different fucking guy. Holy shit. How the fuck did that work? And then he really thought about it. And he says in that clip, I realized that it was just because I had so much conviction and expectation in what I was doing. Okay? And guys, I've done so many things in life. I've been in so many extreme scenarios, right? From when I was 14, those things that I did, to the businesses that I ran, to the sales agency that I have, to these kinds of mindset principles, to dating, to social, like whatever, right? In so many worlds, so many parts of the world, etc. And you keep seeing the same things, right? It's the same thing as life insurance sales. If you, or any sales in general, right? When you then communicate, like you just expect them to buy, like you expect that they should and you're assumptive, they just go into that, right? The same with the hypnosis, the same with everything else. Okay, and also last thing they'll say, a very good way of getting that as well is getting around guys who have it. That's why within the programs that I have, it's a group community thing where it's all the similar kind of guys, very successful guys, on the same path as you. So if you want to join, if you want to know more about that, book a call with me one-on-one at the link in the description here. There will also be a video training that covers this actual thing that I was about to tell you, which is that you have the being, it's most important, right? Who you are on the deeper level, and then communicates out by your micro expressions, by the slight squint in your eyes, by how deep you breathe, etc. The doing, which is the skills, still good to learn, but this is the 80% of it. This is then 10%, and then this is 10%, which is going to be the having. That's like fuel on the fire. You don't want to have this or use this if you don't have this, if you don't have this really. And that is basically then the external optimization, which is going to be your social circle, your social media, your style, how you look, right? Who your friends are, all these kinds of things that can have fuel on the fire, right? And the reason that people don't have success at an elite level like I do, just sincerely, it's just a reality, and you can find out for yourself on Instagram and whatnot, is because they don't have all three. They don't have the fucking trifecta, right? You need to master all three, with the most important being the being, but also if you're the perfect being, but you don't have any social circle, you're just not going to have the social capital to actually get around the kinds of people that you would want to be around, okay? The level that you probably know what I mean. So check the link in the description. Remember this, go fucking crush it, my man.